Now, there's one thing that we can depend on in the 2024 season under Bill O'Brien, and that's going to be an improved passing game under Thomas Castellanos.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and today's episode, we are going to discuss football. We're going to get into the stock market with this team. Are you going to buy? Are you going to sell? Where are we going to be at? We'll get into that. We're going to end it with some news items. We're going to talk about Chris Snee, Will Smith, the lacrosse team. We'll get into all of that on today's show. For the first two segments, however, we are joined by Eagle insider writer Mitch Wolfe to talk about football. We haven't had Mitch on in about a week and a half. Mitch, how's it going?
It's going well. Excited to be back on the show. Been a fun few weeks in the BC sports space, even though it's kind of the quote unquote slow season, given that the big sports aren't actually playing games. But excited to be on, talk about football, even though it's still only May.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So Bill O'Brien, he's now finished his first spring practice session with BC. I got a chance to go watch practice. Most of you got to see the spring game. We're going to play a little game here now. And I want you to kind of give me your stock market take on this. Are you going to buy high, sell low? Where are you at with this group? So let's start with the passing game. Mitch, what is your take on this?
I think that's going to take a dramatic step up. I think that is something that obviously Bill O'Brien's expertise comes in, and that's something that he has kind of brought Will Lawing, the new offensive coordinator, along to do. And based on what we've kind of seen and heard from practices in the spring, that seems to be something that they're really working on with Thomas Castellanos. And as we discussed after the spring game, Grayson James, the transfer from FIU, had a good spring. Maybe he's more of a natural drop back passer, if you will. He obviously has more of the physical prototype that O'Brien has used in the past. But then again, if you look at O'Brien's more recent quarterbacks at Alabama and Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson and Bryce Young, they're more along the lines of what Thomas Castellanos is. So, he's been more willing to adapt his offense to these more mobile quarterbacks as well. But, based on what I saw in the spring, and we talked about this, that, I think they're giving Castellanos a pretty quick whistle. So he's got to get the ball out. We're not just going to let you scramble around all the time in practice. We got to have you making throws. And I thought that he was trying to do that as well. I thought he was trying to make more difficult throws, the throw that the play and the passing concept is meant to go to, as opposed to just checking it out, which I thought Grayson James did a lot of in the spring game. So I think you're going to see that take a big step forward. I think that, having some better receivers, at least a deeper receiving core, more experienced one. You have Lewis Bond back, obviously, who has a pretty good connection with Castellanos, bringing Jerron Bradley, who's a big target. And then you have kind of guys who can, there's kind of, it's multiple dogs, one bone situation with guys like Jaden Skeet, Dino Tomlin, Jaden McGowan, even a guy like Reed Harris that are kind of duking it out for who's going to be the next target. And obviously the tight ends and Kamari Morales and Jeremiah Franklin. But you have like a bevy of targets to use. And with how, Castellanos being in this system, he's been at the team the whole time, spending the whole year working on this, getting more chemistry with his receivers, I think you're going to see him take a big step forward as a passer. Obviously, you're still going to have him do his crazy stuff when he runs. You need that, that kind of explosiveness, and that's why I think he's still going to end up being the quarterback, even if Grayson James is quote unquote a better fit. I think that you got to have those kind of explosive playmaking ability that Castellanos brings to the offense.
So do you think, speaking of his playmaking ability, do you think Bill O'Brien is much more in tuned on how to help Castellanos throw the ball more often when plays break down? I felt like he did it at times last year. I look back to that FSU game specifically where he was masterful at that. But do you think that O'Brien's going to be able to scheme that for him to help him understand this is what, and help the receivers too know what to do when things are breaking down in Castellanos scrambles?
A little bit. That some of that is just kind of creativity. You have excuse me. Obviously, offenses have scramble rules for certain plays. So if the quarterback does get up outside the pocket, receivers either work vertically or work back to the quarterback, depending on the concept and down and distance, what have you. So, but at the end of the day, like that's kind of just instinctive in his ability to create outside the pocket. And this isn't a perfect analog, but looking back at how LSU used Jaden Daniels, and obviously he had incredible receivers. He has a really good offensive line that has two offensive tackles that are probably going to be top 10 picks or top at least first round picks next year's draft. Great receivers, what have you. But a lot of what that offense was basically throw it deep to these guys, throw it like underneath the tight end, or just run. Like the third route or the third progression was just run. And I'm not saying that's what the offense is going to be, but there will certainly be plays where it's read this receiver, read that receiver, maybe check it down. And if the check down, if you don't love the check down yourself, because chances are you probably have a better chance of making a bigger play than that guy.
So let's go on to our next one. Let's look at our next discussion topic, which is the pass rush. Where are you putting the pass rush?
Yeah, this is my buy low position on this one, because obviously pass rush last year the results were not good. I think the process was better than people want to admit. That their pressure rate was, I believe, it was in the 30s among FBS teams, so pretty solid. I think 33%. That's where you kind of want to be. But they had one of the worst, if not like the worst, sack rate in the FBS and the Power Five, which some of that's just bad luck. Slipping on turf, quarterbacks getting rid of the ball quickly, and so that is an outlier of a season in terms of how bad they were at getting sacks. So I think that you're going to see that come back to the norm this year. Obviously, a guy like Donovan Ezeirauku is going to want to have a big bounce back year as a senior. Paul is going to want to get back to form, ideally by not missing so many sacks. And my one caveat with this is that, and we've talked about this, is that I am concerned about the depth at this position, and not that there aren't good, interesting players there. Edwin Kalingi has flashed very positively. Gilbert Tongrongu has made some good plays. I don't think he's going to play that much, but Quintavious Hutchins had a really good spring game. Even Josiah Griffin did as well. But if God forbid, like a guy like Donovan Ezeirauku goes down, has to miss extended amount of time, having those guys have to play a ton of the snaps is questionable for me, just because we haven't seen it. So it's an unknown variable. So I think we've talked about that's one position that I think BC is looking for in the transfer portal, just to get another guy in there that if somebody goes down, they can have some experience depth there that they can rely on, just keep the car between the lines. But I still think that they're going to have a lot more sacks and be more impactful this year. Get some more backfield production in the form of tackles for loss as well. So I guess you could say the defensive line in general, but the pass rush is really what I'm looking for to take a big step up. And not that I think there's going to be anything hugely different. Tim Lewis is probably just as aggressive in terms of blitzing as Jeff Hafley was. But I think just kind of the regression back to the mean of this team, not being so unlucky when it comes to sacks.
So two quick points from a what I know perspective for folks that are listening. In terms of transfer portal, just so you guys know, I've been talking to my sources within the program. I don't expect BC to be very aggressive in the transfer portal right now. As you've seen, there hasn't been BC linked to basically anybody. And I've been told they're going to be very selective if they're going to add anyone right now. I believe their scholarship numbers are up against it. But as Mitch said, they may be right. The one of the names that was out there was a defensive end that they had been connected with, but they didn't even get him on campus, so it wasn't a big deal. The other piece I think that Mitch brings up doesn't help in 2024, but as from the recruiting perspective, if you go to Eagle Insider, I've been covering who's been offered. I have big boards up now for running backs and wide receivers. I'll have tight ends up tomorrow. They have offered a metric poop ton of defensive ends. Clearly, Bill O'Brien knows that this is a position that's of need. And it's going to take, obviously, they're going to be true freshmen, but he's offered a ton of edge rushers. So I think this is something that he sees and something he knows that this team needs to build, especially when you're losing Ezeirauku and potentially Akpala next year. That's a scary thing.
Akpala too, because he's a true senior as well. So they're done after this year. They have no COVID year.
Yeah, so they're very scary. It's scary thin at defensive end moving forward. So that's something I think the staff is looking at. Now, in a moment, Mitch and I are going to look at two more positions. We'll talk about whether he takes the stock on them. Two positions and two game pieces that you may want to talk about. We'll look at those in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning champions is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance with superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here. And I'm here with Mitch Wolfe of Eagle Insider. If you have not checked us out, we have a great site with some great insiders, and it's busy season here. Even though the teams are all done, we have recruiting news, we have previews, we've got everything going on. I think you want to make sure you check that out. Now, Mitch, offensive line, what is your take? Where are you gonna buy, sell? Where are you at with the offensive line?
So this is going to be this is going to take some nuance. So people bear with me here, but I think the offensive line is a stock down, a sell high, whatever you want to call it. And the reason why is because it's hard to replace two NFL players when they leave, and you lose Christian Mahogany and Kyle Hurtle to the NFL. Most of the time, for most programs, you're gonna decrease when you have great players at position and they're no longer on the roster. Unless you're an Alabama, a Georgia, a Michigan, and Ohio State that just has a pipeline of good recruits, especially in the trenches. And this is especially important in the offensive line, where finding talented players at that position is just difficult in general. Or finding good players. They're obviously without talent, but refining that talent to make them quality, reliable starters. So I predict the offensive line is going to regress a bit this year, and that's okay. And it's kind of the inverse of the defensive line sacks debate. Is that the offensive line, first of all, in 2022, they were the worst. They were the worst offensive line in the Power Five in the last 15 years. I think I found terrible pressure rate, couldn't get anything going in the run game, whatever. Next year they come back and they're awesome. I think they were top 20 in pressure rate allowed. It's hard to quantify exactly how much what you use, what stat for offensive line for rushing the ball. But if you watch the games, BC's offensive line dominated almost every opponent in the run game. So they were pretty much able to do. Think of all the times Thomas Castellanos had a clean pocket for more than 5 seconds. It happened so many times. It was crazy. That's probably not going to happen as much in 2024. And granted, I've said that, guards are the least important position in the offensive line relative to the tackles in the center. And luckily those guys are back. You are moving Logan Taylor from left tackle to left guard. You're starting Jude Bowery, who I thought was pretty decent in limited time. He's had some injuries last 2 years. So, I'm a little concerned about his ability to stay on the field. So this leaves right guard as the quote unquote vulnerable position, where it's seeming like a battle between Jack Conley, Kevin Klein, maybe Dwayne Alec and Jack Funker in there as well. And that's I've maintained that that's okay. And like we've said, BC was interested in getting some help there early in the transfer portal, early this offseason, but then that kind of waned as bigger programs took better players, and the talent kind of got to a point where the guys you would bring in from the portal are just as they're fine there, but they're about the same level of a Jack Conley or a Kevin Klein, where you don't really know who's going to be the better player, and so why not just stick with the guys and granted, this was when Jeff Hafley was the coach, and he knew these players better than Bill O'Brien, but I think they've come to kind of the same conclusion. So, and I've said this before as well on the message boards, that I would rather, and again, and to reiterate, like you talked about with the transfer portal, they're being very selective. I would rather see them use that scholarship on somebody, especially on the defensive line, maybe in the secondary, to bring another body there, as opposed to a guy who's maybe going to compete with 4 guys who are already competing for one job. So, if you use that scholarship on that guy, that's fine. But what if he doesn't play at all? And he probably won't, because usually you're not rotating your offensive line as much as you are on defensive line, where depth is more important, at least playable depth that you're consistently using. And
So
let's go ahead.
So I was going to jump in too. I think for someone covering the transfer portal right now, it's important that as you watch some of these big Twitter accounts post about who's recruiting, committing everywhere, that unfortunately the reality of the landscape is, Florida State's landing guys left and right now, and Colorado's landing guys left and right.
And
But
losing
those
guys left and right.
Yeah, or Auburn's gaining guys left and right. But these programs are built for that. BC is a different program. They are supposed to be built on developmental, and to fill in needs in the transfer portal as well. But they've already done that. So you at some point you have to hope that the guys that you have are going to develop into better than the replacement level players. And as you said, Mitch, I think, say what you will about Jack Conley. I know he struggled at times. I would still argue I would probably take him over most of the offensive linemen that are out there right now.
Yeah, like I looked at the portal a few weeks ago, and a bunch of there's a few players. Like when I looked, I think there was like some like 50, there's 50 or 60 offensive linemen that were still available in the portal, and more than half were from G5 schools, and then the other half were split between Power 5 and FCS programs. And there are talented players at the FCS, but I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to bring in this FCS transfer and be fully confident that he's going to supplant Jack Conley. Power 5 guy coming down. I don't, if he's a guy who has played a little bit at Georgia, okay, I'd be interested because there are crazy, really good players ahead of him that maybe he's just not getting playing time. But that's still a question mark. You look at G5 guys, some guys at the MAC or in the Sun Belt. It's like, they're decent at those levels, some good games, some bad. But again, I'm not confident that they're better than Jack Conley or even if, regardless if it's just Jack Conley, there are, again, 4 guys that I think that they're saying one of these guys has to be, or likely one of these guys has to be at least an adequate starter. And if it isn't, we miscalculated and that's our fault. And, we might use our scholarship on somewhere on defense where we think it's more important. I think that, if by some nightmare situation that Jack Conley's still bad, Kevin Klein isn't good enough to play there, Dwayne Alec is going to play there, they put in Jack Funk and then we see what he has, he's been playing a little bit with the ones. He had some reps last year. We finally see what he can bring to the table, and our message board throws the party to millennium because they love Jack Funk for some reason. So, I think the worst case scenario is that Jack Funk becomes the starter at right guard, midway or late in the season. And, then it's like, okay, let's see what the young guy has. And then, and the offensive line is going to change a lot going into next year. So then we'll reassess how the whole position goes. But, I'm saying the offensive line is going to regress, but I don't think it's not going to be regressing to the 2022 levels. It's just going to be, they're solid and the weakness is at right guard. And then I think they can scheme ways to mitigate that weakness.
If Jack Funk becomes a starting guard for BC, he's going to be the official NIL voice of Locked On BC. I'm going to tell you that. No, just kidding. I don't know. Maybe I would. Anyways. All right, one more for you, Mitch. I'm going to throw this one at you. The secondary. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I'm not sure. I think you're an Arrested Development fan, and I don't know if you remember this episode, but there's a point where I think Michael's watching TV, and that I think his name is Jim Kramer, the stock guy, is like, I'm upgrading the Bluth company to a don't buy, and they like have this whole big part. It's like, oh my god, we're up from sell or whatever it was. Is that his name? I can't remember the actual on TV.
I've gotten crap for the last week about the TJ Power news, and I'm ready to take more crap. I've never seen Arrested Development.
I thought you might have been. Okay,
it's on my to-do list. I've just never seen it. So, guys, you can in the comment section hit me up and tell me I'm an idiot.
Well, hopefully people recognize my reference.
I love David Cross. I don't know why.
Yeah, the point is I'm at a don't buy with secondary, and again, here's why. There's just a lot of question marks, and I think, and the range of outcomes is very wide because you're losing Elijah Jones, who was a lockdown corner and arguably the best cornerback in college football in terms of production, shutting down receivers, getting turnovers last year until he was suspended. And you're changing over a lot of positions. Amari Jackson's the only guy that's returning and playing the position that he played last year because Jalen Cheek is moving from slot corner to safety. KD Price is probably replacing Cole Batson, and Jalen Cheek is competing with Bug Jones for the starting strong safety spot. You still got Cam Martinez, who's probably coming in from Ohio State, and then you've got transfers in Breakways Brown, Ryan Turner, and a guy like Max Tucker seems like he's going to be the other starter. So a lot of moving parts here. And I think it could be good because obviously we saw that once Elijah Jones went down, secondary was really not good. Mari Jackson got forced into covering other teams' number one receivers. He struggled a bit there. Guys, Max Tucker was up and down, had some good games here, bad games there. Again, Jalen Cheeks playing a different position. We don't really know much about Bug Jones. He's mostly just played special teams. KB Price was mostly good, but he's a young player. We just don't know yet. I think there is a decent possibility this secondary positively surprises, but I think we just need to wait a little more, get some more evidence on this, because I think, and obviously they're going to be tested to start the season. Florida State's going to be a tough opponent. Missouri's got arguably the best receiver in college football in Luther Burden III, and they've got some other good weapons. I don't know how good Western Kentucky is in terms of talent, but they throw the ball a lot. So they're going to throw the ball around the yard. They might test BC a bit. So, I think this group is going to take their lumps to start the year. But I think kind of once we get to the midpoint, hit one of those bye weeks, then we might say, okay, these guys are starting to settle in. Is obviously the new defensive scheme, which I think will mostly help them. But again, early this season, they'll be working some kinks out, figuring out who plays best where, who does what best, get the best guys in the field, what have you. So this is if we get to the point of the season early in the year where it's like, okay, they're struggling, but there's some flashes, maybe that's when you want to buy low, and then by the end of the season, you're riding the BC secondary to the moon.
All right, Mitch, thank you for coming on today. Do you have any last thoughts before you head on out?
Nope. One thing on the message board, I did put out a call for kind of content suggestions, ideas. I have some things I'm thinking about working on, but wanted to see if anybody had lingering questions. We've had some cool responses. This actually came out of a response from one of our writers, and I'm just going to shout them out now. Devlin004. This kind of inspired that idea, that comment inspired this episode. But again, just can emphasize people should go over there. Got a really vibrant community going there.
It's free,
and if you have any other questions.
And I've always said too, to sign up for Eagle Insider, to sign up for the message board is absolutely free. Like you can sign
just
up,
go in the comment. Yeah,
and there's going to be posts that are VIP only, but a lot of the mayhem and talks on our boards are free. So just go continue, Mitch. So go ahead.
Yeah. So if you have any other questions about this kind of stuff for BC, and obviously AJ can answer some of the stuff too. We have our BC hockey blogger, Kate Otis, who writes about women's basketball. We have Skip McCarty, who covers baseball. So there's always a lot of chatter going on there about pretty much every BC sport you can imagine. So just couldn't recommend highly enough that you check it out.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. We love having you on. We'll be back again soon with you. I promise you that. We're going to talk a little bit about all the news items that are going on around BC football, basketball, all sorts of things in our final segment. Don't leave. You want to make sure you hear all about that. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up to each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get. With unique stickers, you can trade up with friends. You can get cool pieces to travel the boards with, and emojis that you can taunt your friends with. I'm going to taunt Mitch when we play Monopoly Go again. So plus Monopoly Go now has constantly different tournaments and challenges, like the timed events, the massive multipliers. They got everything. So there's always something fun to do on Monopoly Go. Make sure to download it on Apple or the Google Play Store. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple finances into one hub and across the expert analysis you need to lend to your entire portfolio with confidence. I have my 401k. I have some stocks that I'm investing in. On Yahoo Finance, I just combine them all together. I don't have to look around. It's all in one spot. So for more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand everyone trusts if they're an investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. With a community of over 90 million users every month, 90 million users, that's about half of what listens to our podcast. I'm just kidding. No, that's a ton of users. Make sure to check out Yahoo Finance for incomprehensive financial news and analysis, visit yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. Mitch headed out. Sometimes we get him in for football, and then when I get into the non-football stuff or the non-analysis stuff, I send him on his way. But if you want more Mitch, come over to Eagle Insider. Now, let's get into some news items. Chris Snee. Chris Snee is analyst on the BC football team for the last 2 years, working with the offensive line. Was key to a lot of the offensive line recruiting, even though BC has not been particularly strong in football offensive line recruiting lately. He's been key. I mean, he's been everywhere. Well, he's back. He's going back. He's doing his cycle, right? He started with Boston College. He went to the Giants. He ended up back at Boston College after he finished his career. Now he's going back to the Giants. Now he's going to be a scout for the Giants. Now, is this a big thing? Is this something like devastating towards Boston College? No. This is what coaches do. Listen, Chris Snee was great to have here. He's an excellent ambassador to Boston College. He knows the school. He has been part of the program. Loved having him be here. But the fact of the matter remains that coaches at his level, they got to move. If they want to get the experience they need to get to that next level as a coach, they got to go to other programs. It's just part of the job. And Matt Applebaum is firmly entrenched as the offensive line coach right now, especially after last year. He's not going anywhere. So Chris Snee may need to go someplace else, get some new experience so that he can get that next level job. And that's great. You, as a BC fan, you should be happy for him. This is a great opportunity. He's a New Jersey guy. It's probably closer to home, and he's going to go do that. Now, who's going to take his spot? You know, maybe Doug Marrone could do some of the recruiting. He's an analyst now too, or maybe they'll bring in somebody else. We don't know, but Chris Snee is definitely going someplace else. Now, another big question everyone has is what's going on with Will Smith. And on Tuesday night, if you're hoping he comes back for BC hockey, you got some bad news. As San Jose got the number one pick in the NHL draft, which means they're going to draft Macklin Celebrini from BU. And from all signs, from what BC hockey bloggers posted, Mike McMahon of the Mac Report, the Sharks need to sell this program, this team. And with Celebrini and Will Smith, who's already drafted by them, that's a nice 1-2 punch of American-made hockey players that they can sell to their season ticket holders, right? So it sounds like Will Smith is a goner. And as I said on the other episode, that there's some nice recruits coming in, but man, that's got to sting a little bit, right? You've now lost Cutter Gauthier and Will Smith, your two top goal scorers. You can replace it, but it's going to be tough. So we'll have to wait and see what he chooses. But by all means, it sounds like Will Smith might be going to the Sharks. Finally, we know what the tournament's going to look like for women's lacrosse. They're going to play the winner of Drexel and Princeton, and then they will get the winner. If they win that, they would play the winner of Michigan, Mercer, Notre Dame, or Coastal Carolina. I mean, that seems like it's a slam dunk for BC, but you never know. Hey, you can't rule out anything happening, right? So it's a nice, hopefully, trip to the Final Four for BC women's lacrosse. They're playing the best, they're playing their best that they have all year. Maybe that's enough to make them win another national championship. We'll have to wait and see. This is AJ Black. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hit that like button on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. I'm the editor and publisher of 247's Eagle Insider, a great site for Eagles news. I hope you check it out. And I hope you come back to Locked On Boston College, your team every day.